So, you know that feeling when the piece of tech you really want is just way out of your price range? You could, wait for a sale, or you could get a little creative. Today, we're diving into two pretty radical ways people are getting the gear they want, either building it themselves from the ground up or buying a super cheap knockoff. This is DIY versus dupes, and by the end, we might just find a simple rule for when these big gambles actually pay off.
So you've got two totally different worlds here. In one corner, we have the ultimate act of creation, a tech expert who literally 3D prints a custom PC case from scratch. And in the other corner, you have the ultimate roll of the dice, buying a cheap imitation, a dupe of some super popular gadget. One is all about total control, the other is all about a massive discount. So the big question is, why would anyone go to these extremes? And what can we actually learn from them?
When you get right down to it, it really just boils down to two things, right? On one side, it's all about the personal satisfaction of building something with your own two hands. And on the other, it's that simple, powerful pull of a really, really good bargain.
Okay, so let's start with our DIYer, Nate. For him, this whole project isn't just about getting a new computer. No, it's about having total control, designing a system that does exactly what he wants. He's building a personal, super secure server, a NAS, to keep his baby's photos safe and, importantly, off the cloud. It's about the challenge, the love of the craft, and that amazing feeling of creating something that is 100% yours.
Now let's completely switch gears and look at the dupe hunter. For them, the motivation is crystal clear. It's all about this number, $80. $80 for a speaker that, on the outside, looks pretty much identical to the $300 original. This has nothing to do with craftsmanship. It's all about pure, unfiltered value. And just look at how tempting that value can get. I mean, we're talking savings over 60, even 70%. When you see numbers like that, a $350 vacuum for $120, you start to understand why someone would be willing to roll the dice on a company. The potential payoff is just massive.
So, what's the catch? Because there's always a catch, right? Well, each of these paths has its own very steep price of entry. For the DIYer, that price is paid in time, skill, and a whole lot of effort. For the dupe buyer, it's paid in just pure high-stakes risk. Let's see how that gamble plays out for both of them.
So this is the reality of that DIY dream. It's a real gauntlet. Nate didn't just plug a few things in. He 3D printed a super complex custom case, he salvaged parts from an old computer, and then, get this, he had to physically cut away parts of his brand new case just because the motherboard standoffs didn't quite line up. This is a project that takes some serious skill and a ton of patience. And here's what's really crucial. Nate even admits that after all the work he put into another project, a custom CNC machine, he might not have even saved much money in the end. So for the truly dedicated builder, it's clear the journey itself is the reward, not just the final product or the final price tag. Now, the dupe buyer's gamble is a whole different beast. You're not battling hardware issues, you're battling straight-up deception. The websites for these fakes make some absolutely wild claims. A phone with a 64-megapixel camera that's really only an 8-megapixel sensor, an iPad with a terabyte of storage that actually has 32 gigs, and my personal favorite, a doorbell promising super penetration. Spoiler alert, the signal did not in fact penetrate. But, and this is a big but, here's where things get really interesting. Despite all the hard work and all the insane risks, both of these paths can lead to some incredible successes. Sometimes, the alternative isn't just a compromise, it's actually a full-on upgrade. Okay, so after all that cutting, troubleshooting, and configuring, Nate got his perfect setup. A super powerful, custom-built gaming PC, and that secure server for his family's photos, all tucked inside a case he designed and printed himself. That is a total victory of vision and skill.
And then you have this, the result that I guarantee nobody saw coming. In a direct head-to-head test, 3 of the dupes weren't just good enough for the price, they were actually better than the expensive originals. The fake speaker, it was louder and had a battery. The fake vacuum, it glided smoother and picked up more dirt. And the fake lamp, it was brighter and had an app with more features. It's absolutely shocking.
Of course, it's not all happy surprises and amazing victories. Both of these paths are absolutely lined with potential disasters, and they range from little frustrations to just catastrophic failures. The real difference, though, is in the type of failure you're dealing with. For a DIYer, yeah, the problems are frustrating. A part doesn't fit, you have to cut something, maybe you have to leave a fan off the final build, but they're usually solvable. For the dupe buyer, the disasters can be absolute. The thing is unusable, or its specs are just a complete and utter lie. And if you want to see what a dupe disaster looks like in data form, just look at this. After only 1 hour of gaming, the real phone is still sitting at 86% battery. The fake, which by the way claimed to have an even bigger battery, is down to a miserable 32%. It's not even in the same ballpark. The performance is just unusable.
And then there's this masterpiece, the fake headphones. They look the part, and honestly, the sound was surprisingly okay. But you know what? None of that mattered because the ear cups were designed in a way that they angled outwards, away from your head, making them physically impossible to wear properly. You really can't make this stuff up. That is the kind of wild risk you take for that rock-bottom price.
So, what's the big takeaway from these two wild extremes? After all this, it actually comes down to a surprisingly clear and honestly a very useful rule for our own tech decisions.
We're calling it the simplicity principle. And the idea is, well, pretty simple. The more basic a product's main job is, the more likely a cheap copy can actually do it well. Think about it. A speaker just has to make sound. A lamp just has to make light. A vacuum just needs to create suction. These are all relatively simple functions to copy.
And check this out. The results from the dupe investigation back this up perfectly. For the simple products, the speaker, the lamp, and the vacuum, the success rate was 100%. Every single one of them actually outperformed the original. But for the complex products, things with software and processors and integrated systems like phones and tablets, the success rate was a big fat 0.
And this brings us all the way back to our DIYer Nate. The simplicity principle explains exactly why you can't just buy a cheap, functional knockoff of a complex gaming PC. It just doesn't work. But it also shows why Nate's approach did work. For these really complex systems, the total control you get from a DIY build, that becomes the real high-quality alternative. You get exactly what you want because you control every single part.
So, the next time you're eyeing some pricey new gadget, just ask yourself, is its main job simple enough that you can risk the dupe? Or is it so complex that you should probably just pay for the original? Or maybe, just maybe, you're ready to pick up some tools and build it yourself. The choice, as always, is yours.